The hot summer sun beat down on the dry countryside that hadn't seen rain in months. Smoke hung in the air, but it seemed so far away that most people in the small town of Pine Ridge barely noticed. Among them was Mei Lin, a woman with hope in her eyes and a baby growing in her belly. Mei Lin stood in what would soon be her baby's room, carefully putting together a wooden crib. At 8 months pregnant, her movements were slow but determined. Her round belly bumped against the crib rail as she tightened the last screw. She stepped back with a satisfied smile, picturing her baby sleeping peacefully in this very spot in just a few weeks. "Perfect," she whispered, running her hand over the smooth wood. Outside, the sky had a strange orange glow that Mei Lin didn't notice. She was too busy arranging tiny clothes in a drawer, folding each one with care. She and her husband Raj had only moved to this house 4 months ago. They had fallen in love with its wide windows and the quiet neighborhood, far from the noise and rush of the city where they had lived before. "It's a good place to raise a family," Raj had said when they'd first saw it. Mei Lin agreed, imagining their child playing in the backyard under the big oak tree. The radio played softly in the background as Mei Lin worked. Between songs, a weather announcer mentioned high winds and fire danger, but she hardly heard it. Such warnings had been common all summer, and nothing had happened so far. The fires were all in the next county over, at least 50 miles away. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Raj. "Hey, I was just finishing up she began cheerfully. "Mei Lin, listen to me." Raj's voice was tight with worry. "You need to pack a bag. Right now." Mei Lin felt her heart skip a beat. "What's wrong?" "The fire jumped the river. The wind changed direction. It's moving fast, coming straight for Pine Ridge." His words came in a rush. "They're calling for everyone to leave. I'm on my way home now." Mei Lin walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. For the first time, she really looked at the sky. What she had thought was just the evening light was actually a thick cloud of smoke stained by the setting sun, and it was much closer than before. "How long?" she asked, her throat suddenly dry. "The radio says we have a few hours, maybe less." "Don't wait for me. Start packing. Just the important stuff, documents, some clothes, and your hospital bag." Mei Lin's hand went to her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her sudden fear. "I'll wait for you," she said firmly. "We leave together." After hanging up, Mei Lin moved with purpose. She pulled out the emergency bag they had prepared months ago, but never thought they'd need. Into it went their passports, marriage certificate, and the folder with their house papers. She added the photo album of their wedding and the ultrasound pictures of their baby. In the bedroom, she packed clothes for a few days, then grabbed her hospital bag with everything she'd need when the baby came. Throughout it all, she tried to stay calm, but her hands trembled slightly as she worked. From the living room window, she could see neighbors loading their cars. Some looked organized, others panicked. An older couple struggled with heavy suitcases, and a young man ran back and forth from his house with armfuls of belongings. The sky was growing darker, not with night but with smoke. Ash began to fall like strange gray snow, collecting on the windowsill. Mei Lin felt the baby move again and placed both hands on her belly. "It's okay," she whispered. "Dad will be here soon. We'll be safe." But as a police car drove slowly down the street with its loudspeaker announcing immediate evacuation, Mei Lin wasn't so sure. She looked back at the carefully prepared nursery and wondered if she would ever see it again. The sound of a car engine roaring up the driveway made Mei Lin rush to the front door. Raj jumped out of his truck, not even bothering to close the door behind him. His usually neat work shirt was stained with sweat, and his face showed the worry he was trying to hide. "How bad is it?" Mei Lin asked as he hugged her tightly. "Bad," he said, his voice muffled against her hair. "The fire is moving faster than they predicted. The main road out of town is already backed up for miles." Through the open door, they could see neighbors throwing bags into cars and trucks. A woman across the street was crying as she tried to catch her cat who had escaped its carrier. The air had grown thicker with smoke in just the short time since Raj had called. "I've packed everything important," Mei Lin said, pointing to the bags by the door. "The baby's things are ready too." Raj nodded, grabbing the heaviest bag. "We'll take the back road through the hills. It's longer but might be clearer." As they loaded the car, Mei Lin watched Ash landing on the windshield. Each tiny gray flake reminded her of how close the danger was coming. The baby kicked hard, as if protesting the rush and worry in the air. Just as Rage closed the trunk, his phone rang. His face darkened as he listened. "It's my mom," he said, covering the phone. "She's alone and scared. Says she can't find her medicine or her car keys." Rage's mother had moved to a small house just outside town after his father died last year. She was still adjusting to living alone and often got confused when stressed. "The fire's coming from that direction too," Mei Lin said, looking worriedly at the orange glow now visible above the tree line to the east. Rage ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Mei Lin knew meant he was making a difficult decision. "She's panicking. I need to go get her." "We can both go," Mei Lin suggested, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't the best plan. The detour would take precious time they might not have. "No," Raj shook his head firmly. "The roads are getting worse by the minute. If we both go and get stuck, it's too risky for the baby." He placed his hand on her belly. "You need to go straight to the high school. They've set it up as the main shelter. I'll get my mom and meet you there." Mei Lin felt tears forming but fought them back. Now wasn't the time to fall apart. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," Raj said, kissing her forehead. 2 hours tops. I'll be at the shelter with my mom before you even get the good cuts." He tried to smile, but his eyes gave away his fear. Mei Lin got into the driver's seat of their small blue car while Raj quickly transferred the baby's car seat to his truck. Through the window, he gave her final instructions. "Stay on the main evacuation route. Don't try any shortcuts. Keep the radio on for updates." He leaned in for one more kiss. "I love you both so much." "We love you too," Mei Lin whispered. "Now go get your mom." She watched in the rearview mirror as Raj's truck disappeared around the corner, heading in the opposite direction from safety. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she joined the line of cars leaving their neighborhood. The traffic moved slowly at first, then came to almost a complete stop as everyone tried to leave at once. Through her open window, Mei Lin could hear people calling to each other from car to car, sharing rumors about which roads were still open. "They say the fire jumped Highway 16. The wind's pushing it at 40 miles an hour. The gas station on Pine Road just went up." Mei Lin turned on the radio, hoping for official information instead of frightening gossip. The announcer's voice was urgent but calm. "All residents of Pine Ridge and surrounding areas must evacuate immediately. The northern evacuation route via Highway 16 is now closed due to fire activity. All evacuees should proceed to the southern route only. I repeat, the northern route is closed." Mei Lin's heart sank. The northern route was where Rage had gone to reach his mother. She tried calling him, but the call wouldn't go through. As the sky grew darker above her and the line of cars inched forward, she realized with growing dread that she and Raj were now separated by a wall of fire that no one had seen coming. Mei Lin gripped the steering wheel as the line of cars crawled forward. What should have been a 20-minute drive had stretched into an hour with no end in sight. The radio crackled with updates about the fire, each one worse than the last. The baby shifted uncomfortably inside her, as if sensing her growing fear. Mei Lin took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for both their sakes. She glanced at her phone again, still no signal. She had no way to reach Rage, no way to know if he had found his mother, no way to tell him the evacuation routes had changed. A loud crack split the air. Through her windshield, Mei Lin watched in horror as a massive pine tree, its trunk already burning, crashed across the road ahead. Flames licked up its length, creating a fiery barrier that no car could pass. People began honking and shouting. The woman in the car ahead of Mei Lin got out, screaming into her phone. A man ran past, yelling for everyone to turn around. The orderly evacuation dissolved into chaos. "Everyone back up," someone shouted. "We need to go another way." But backing up was impossible. The narrow mountain road was packed bumper to bumper with cars full of frightened people and their belongings. Mei Lin watched the side mirror as more vehicles joined the line behind her, trapping them all in place. The smoke grew thicker, making her eyes water and her throat burn. She pulled her shirt over her nose and mouth, trying to filter the air. The baby kicked frantically, as if protesting the toxic smoke filling the car despite the closed windows. Through watery eyes, Mei Lin spotted something that made her heart race: small fires starting in the dry grass along the roadside. Sparks carried by the wind were landing everywhere, starting new spot fires that grew at frightening speed. People began abandoning their cars, grabbing whatever they could carry and heading for the fields away from the main fire. Mei Lin watched an elderly couple hobbling as fast as they could across the rough ground. A father ran with a small child on his shoulders and a suitcase in his hand. "I can't do that," she whispered, looking down at her swollen belly. Even if she could somehow climb through the rough terrain, the smoke and exertion would be too dangerous for the baby. As panic mounted around her, Mei Lin's mind raced for options. Then she remembered something an old dirt road rage had shown her on one of their weekend drives. He loved exploring the countryside, always saying, "It's good to know all the ways in and out of a place." The old logging road should be just ahead, hidden by trees but visible if you knew where to look. It wasn't on most maps, but it led down toward the valley, away from the main fire path. With trembling hands, Mei Lin turned the key in the ignition. Her car was still running, unlike some that had overheated in the standstill traffic. She edged out of the line, ignoring shouts from other drivers, and drove along the narrow shoulder until she reached what looked like a gap in the trees. There it was, overgrown but still visible, the old dirt track cutting down through the forest. Without hesitation, she turned onto it, branches scraping against her car windows as the path narrowed. The car bounced violently over rocks and ruts, each jolt sending pain through her back. The logging road was in worse shape than she remembered, clearly unused for years. Still, it was taking her away from the immediate danger, and that was all that mattered. For 20 minutes, she navigated the rough terrain, hands tight on the wheel, eyes scanning for obstacles. The smoke was thinner here, giving her hope that she had made the right choice. Then the road dipped sharply. Mei Lin braked, but too late. The front wheels hit a washout in the old road, a deep rut carved by years of rain. The car lurched forward, then stopped, the front wheels suspended over a dried creek bed. The engine whined as she pressed the gas, but the wheels just spun uselessly in the air. She was stuck. With shaking hands, Mei Lin tried calling Raj again. No signal. She tried the emergency number. Nothing. The fire had likely damaged the cell towers, cutting off all communication. As the reality of her situation sank in, Mei Lin felt a strange sensation, a tightening across her belly that took her breath away. She froze, waiting for it to pass. When it did, she knew exactly what it was. Her first contraction. "No," she whispered, placing her hand on her belly. "Not now. Not here." Another contraction gripped Mei Lin, stronger than the first. She breathed through it, counting seconds like they had taught in her birthing class. When it passed, she knew she couldn't stay in the car. The smoke was growing thicker again, and she could hear the distant roar of the fire. She gathered her backpack with water bottles, some snacks, her phone, and the small emergency kit she always kept in the glove compartment. With difficulty, she pushed open the car door and stepped out into the hazy air. The heat hit her immediately, like opening an oven door. Ash floated down like dirty snow, settling on her hair and shoulders. In the distance, she could see an orange glow through the trees that hadn't been there before. The fire was coming. Mei Lin looked around desperately. Going back up to the main road wasn't an option. The only way was forward, down into the valley where there might be a stream or clearer area. She started walking, one hand supporting her belly, the other clutching her backpack. Each step was a struggle. The ground was uneven, covered with loose rocks and fallen branches. Her back ached and sweat trickled down her face despite the autumn chill that should have been in the air. The smoke made it hard to see more than 20 feet ahead. After just 10 minutes of walking, another contraction hit, stronger than before. Mei Lin leaned against a tree trunk, breathing hard. When it passed, she checked her watch. Only 15 minutes since the last one. Too fast. First babies weren't supposed to come this quickly. "Please wait," she whispered to her unborn child. "Just give me time to find somewhere safe." She continued down the slope, moving as quickly as she dared. Twice she slipped on loose stones, barely catching herself before falling. The third time she wasn't so lucky. Her foot caught on a root and she fell hard onto her hands and knees. For a moment, Mei Lin stayed there, fighting tears of pain and fear. Then she forced herself up, checked that the baby was still moving, and kept going. The smoke was getting worse. Mei Lin pulled her shirt over her nose again, but it didn't help much. Her eyes stung, and each breath burned her lungs. She knew the smoke wasn't good for the baby either. She needed shelter, and soon. As if answering her desperate prayer, the trees ahead thinned, revealing an odd shape in the hillside. Mei Lin squinted through the smoke. It looked like a dark hole, an opening of some kind cut into the rocky slope. Moving closer, she realized what it was. An old mine entrance. A weathered wooden sign hung crookedly beside it, the words Silver Creek Mine barely readable beneath years of grime. Mei Lin hesitated. The dark opening looked forbidding, and she'd heard stories about dangerous abandoned mines. But another glance at the approaching wall of smoke and flame made her decision clear. She had no other choice. At the entrance, she paused to turn on her phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a tunnel that extended deep into the hillside. Old wooden support beams lined the walls and ceiling, most looking surprisingly solid despite their age. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing slightly. "Is anyone in here?" Only silence answered. Taking a deep breath of relatively clean air, Mei Lin stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately. After the scorching heat outside, the cool dampness of the mine was a relief. The air smelled musty but breathable, without the choking smoke that filled the forest. Her flashlight beam bounced off the rocky walls as she ventured deeper, careful to watch her step on the uneven ground. About 50 feet in, the tunnel widened into a small chamber where the miners had probably once taken breaks or stored equipment. It was here that another contraction seized her, so intense that Mei Lin had to lean against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the dirt floor. This one lasted longer, nearly a minute of gripping pain that left her gasping. When it finally eased, she checked her watch again. 12 minutes since the last one. Too fast, much too fast. In the beam of her flashlight, she examined the chamber more carefully. It was roughly 15 feet across, with a ceiling high enough to stand. Old mining tools lay scattered in corners, rusted with age. A wooden crate sat against one wall, its contents long gone. Mei Lin shrugged off her backpack and took stock of her supplies. 2 water bottles, some granola bars, a small first aid kit, her phone at 42% battery, and a light jacket she'd grabbed from the car. Not much for what lay ahead. Outside, she could hear the fire growing louder, a hungry roar punctuated by the crack and crash of falling trees. But in here, protected by layers of rock and earth, she might have a chance. Mei Lin spread her jacket on the ground to make a small space to sit. Then she took out her phone and tried once more to call for help. Still no signal. As she set the phone down, its light illuminating the rough-hewn chamber, another contraction began. This time, Mei Lin didn't fight her tears. "I guess it's just you and me, little one," she whispered when she could speak again. "And you're really determined to meet me today, aren't you?" Hours passed in the dim cave as Mei Lin's labor intensified. She sat with her back against the cool stone wall, timing contractions on her watch. 8 minutes apart, then 6, then 5. She tried to remember everything from her birthing classes, but those lessons had assumed she'd be in a hospital with doctors, nurses, and most importantly, Raj holding her hand. Not alone in a mine with only the weak beam of her phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. Focus, she told herself, one thing at a time. She arranged her small collection of supplies neatly beside her. The 2 water bottles she rationed carefully, taking only small sips to stay hydrated. The granola bars remained untouched as her stomach was too knotted with pain and fear to feel hunger. Another contraction gripped her, stronger than before. Mei Lin breathed deeply through it, counting backward from 20 like her birthing coach had taught her. When it passed, she checked her watch again. 4 minutes now. Things were moving fast. The phone's battery had dropped to 36%. She turned off the flashlight to save power, plunging herself into complete darkness. It was like being wrapped in black velvet, thick, absolute, and smothering. She had never known darkness could feel so heavy. "Light," she whispered to herself after just 30 seconds. "I need some light." She turned the flashlight back on, promising herself she'd only use it during contractions or when absolutely necessary. The rest of the time, she would sit in the dark and save the battery for when the baby came. From somewhere deep in the tunnel came a soft pattering sound. Water dripping, she hoped, not rats, or worse. To distract herself, Mei Lin began to talk aloud. "When we get out of here," she said to her unborn child, "your dad is going to be so surprised to meet you already." She stroked her belly gently. "He wanted to be here for this. He's waited so long to meet you." Another contraction came, so intense that Mei Lin cried out, her voice echoing off the stone walls. When it passed, she wiped sweat from her forehead with a shaking hand. "We'd had it all planned," she continued, her voice trembling. "The hospital bag was packed. Your dad was going to drive me to the big hospital in the city. We even practiced the route 3 times. She laughed softly, though it came out more like a sob. "I don't think we practiced for this." Outside, the world burned. Even deep in the mine, Mei Lin could hear the fire's roar growing louder. Occasionally, the ground shook slightly as a large tree fell nearby. The smoke had not yet reached her hiding place, but she could smell it, a thin, acrid scent that crept into the mind despite the distance. As minutes turned to hours, Mei Lin moved through her labor in a strange bubble of timelessness. With no natural light to mark the passage of day to night, and growing too tired to keep checking her watch, she measured time only by the rhythm of her contractions, which grew steadily closer together. When the contractions were just 3 minutes apart, Mei Lin used precious battery power to record a voice message for Raj. "Hi, love," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not sure if you'll ever hear this, but if you do," her voice broke. "I want you to know I'm okay. The baby's coming early. We're in an old mine off the logging road. Remember when you showed it to me?" A contraction interrupted her, and she breathed through it before continuing. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm doing my best. I remember everything from our classes. I'm staying calm." This wasn't entirely true, but she wanted to reassure him if he ever heard this. "I love you so much. And I promise I'll take care of our baby." As the night wore on, or what she assumed was night, Mei Lin entered what she recognized as transition, the most intense phase of labor. Contractions came in powerful waves that left her gasping, barely recovering before the next one hit. Her phone battery dropped to 15%. She turned off all power-hungry apps, keeping only the flashlight function available. In the stretches of darkness between using the light, she focused on her breathing and the distant memory of Raj's voice from their classes. "You can do this," he had told her. "You're the strongest person I know." She clung to those words now. When the contractions were nearly continuous, Mei Lin knew it was time. Using the flashlight, she checked her surroundings once more, preparing the cleanest space she could. She placed her jacket down and positioned herself as best she could, following instincts as old as humanity itself. Her body told her to push, and she did, gathering all her remaining strength. The phone's light flickered, the battery warning flashing on screen. She had minutes of light left at most. Outside, a massive crash shook the entire tunnel as a tree fell near the entrance. Dust and small stones rained down from the ceiling. For a terrifying moment, Mei Lin feared the entire mine would collapse. But the old support beams held, and the rumbling stopped. Alone in the near darkness, with the world burning outside and her strength fading, Mei Lin faced the most primal human experience with nothing but her will to live and her love for the child who was coming, ready or not. "Please," she whispered to God, to the universe, to anyone who might be listening, "please let us make it through this." The phone's light dimmed further as the battery drained its final reserves. In the fading glow, Mei Lin steeled herself for what was to come. One final push. One final chance to bring life into a world that, outside these stone walls, was consumed by fire and destruction. Mei Lin's phone died just as the final stage of labor began. The last image on the screen showed 1% battery before darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. How would she see her baby? How would she know what to do? Then, strangely, a sense of calm washed over her. Women had been giving birth since the beginning of time, long before hospitals and electric lights. Her body knew what to do. In the pitch blackness, Mei Lin's other senses sharpened. She could hear water dripping somewhere in the mine. She could feel the cool earth beneath her. And most importantly, she could feel her body's signals telling her when to push. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. "We can do this." When the next contraction came, Maylin bore down with all her strength. She bit her lip to keep from screaming as fire seemed to tear through her. Again and again she pushed, fighting exhaustion, drawing on reserves of strength she never knew she had. And then suddenly relief. A slippery sensation, a final push, and she felt her baby slide into the world. In the darkness, Maylin reached out with trembling hands and touched her child for the first time. "You're here," she sobbed, carefully lifting the tiny wet body to her chest. "You're really here." For a heart-stopping moment, there was silence. Then the most beautiful sound Maylin had ever heard filled the mine, her baby's first angry cry, strong and defiant. Tears streamed down Maylin's face as she held her crying child close. "That's right," she encouraged. "Let me hear you. You're okay. We're both okay." Working by touch alone, Maylin cleaned her baby as best she could with the edge of her shirt. She could feel tiny arms and legs kicking with surprising strength. 10 fingers, 10 toes, all seemed well. From her backpack, she pulled out a clean t-shirt she'd packed for the evacuation. It would have to serve as the baby's first blanket. She wrapped the tiny body carefully, making sure to cover the head to preserve warmth in the cool mine. Only then did she remember she hadn't even checked if she had a son or daughter. Gently unwrapping the cloth, Maylin felt again. A daughter. She had a little girl. "Hello, little girl," she whispered, rewrapping her snugly. "I'm your mom. Your dad is going to be so happy to meet you. He's been talking to you for months through my belly, and now you're finally here." The ground rumbled as another tree fell somewhere outside. The baby whimpered, and Maylin held her closer. "What should we call you?" she wondered aloud, rocking gently. "We had picked out a name, but it doesn't seem right now." She thought of the world outside, burning and being reborn. She thought of her own journey through fire and darkness to bring this new life into the world. "Lifen," she decided. "We'll call you Lifen." The name meant beautiful phoenix, perfect for a child born in the midst of fire who would rise from these ashes. Hours passed as Maylin recovered from the birth. She drank the last of her water, knowing she needed to stay hydrated to feed her daughter. When Lifen rooted against her chest, Maylin helped her find her way to nurse for the first time. "That's it," she encouraged as the baby latched on. "You know what to do." For 2 days, they remained in the mine. Maylin's hunger became a constant companion, but she found that thirst was worse. She licked moisture from the damp mine walls when desperation grew too strong. Each drop was precious, keeping her alive so she could keep Lifen alive. Without her phone, time lost all meaning. She measured hours by Lifen's feeding schedule and her own growing weakness. She sang lullabies in the darkness, songs her own mother had sung to her, songs she had dreamed of singing to her child in a sunny nursery, not a dark mine. "Your grandmother will teach you much better songs," she promised Lifen. "And your father will sing those silly songs he loves. You'll have a real home, with sunlight and toys and people who love you." On what she guessed was their 3rd day in the mine, Maylin noticed the air had changed. The smell of smoke had faded. The distant roar of the fire had quieted. It was time to see if the world outside still existed. Maylin wrapped Lifen snugly against her chest, using her shirt as a makeshift carrier. Her legs trembled with weakness as she stood up for the first time in days. Each step was a struggle as she made her way toward the mine entrance, one hand trailing along the rough wall to guide her through the darkness. A faint glow ahead gave her hope. The mine entrance was still there, not collapsed or blocked by fallen trees. As she got closer, the light grew stronger, revealing the opening to the outside world. Maylin paused at the threshold, blinking in the sudden brightness. What she saw took her breath away. The forest she had walked through just days ago was gone. In its place was a blackened landscape of ash and scorched tree trunks that stretched as far as she could see. The ground was still warm beneath her feet, smoking in places where the fire burned deep into the soil. "Oh my God," she whispered, holding Lifen closer. "It's all gone." The baby stirred against her chest, making tiny noises that reminded Maylin why she had to keep going. They needed help, and soon. She was weak from hunger and thirst, and Lifen needed proper medical care. Carefully, Maylin picked her way across the burned landscape. Without landmarks, it was hard to know which way to go. The logging road was barely visible, just a slightly clearer path through the destruction. She decided to head downhill, hoping to reach the valley and perhaps find a road or town. The going was slow and painful. Her body, still recovering from childbirth, protested every step. She stopped often to rest, sitting on fallen logs that were cool enough to touch. Each time, she checked on Lifen, making sure the baby was breathing well and protected from the ash in the air. "Your dad is looking for us," she told Lifen during one rest stop. "I know he is. He would never give up." After walking for what felt like hours, but was probably less than one, Mei Lin heard a sound that made her heart leap, the distant thrum of helicopter blades. She looked up, scanning the sky, and there it was, a yellow search and rescue helicopter moving slowly across the burned forest. With a surge of desperate energy, Mei Lin hurried to the nearest clearing. She needed to be visible from the air. Waving one arm frantically while supporting Lifen with the other, she shouted though she knew they couldn't hear her. "Here, we're here." The helicopter continued its path, not seeing her. Tears of frustration welled in Mei Lin's eyes. They were so close to rescue, yet still so far. Then she remembered the emergency whistle on her keychain. She fumbled in her pocket with shaking hands and pulled it out. Taking a deep breath, she blew as hard as she could, producing a piercing sound that cut through the air. The helicopter paused, hovering. She blew again, waving her free arm. The aircraft turned, heading in her direction. "They see us," she told Lifen, tears now flowing freely. "They're coming for us." The helicopter circled once, twice, then began to lower toward a flat area about 50 yards away. The wind from its blades whipped ash into the air, forcing Mei Lin to turn away and cover Lifen's face. When she looked back, 2 rescue workers in bright orange suits were running toward her across the blackened ground. The first to reach her was a woman with kind eyes above her face mask. "I'm Lisa with Mountain Rescue," she shouted over the helicopter noise. "Are you hurt?" "I had a baby," Mei Lin said, her voice cracking, "in a mine. 3 days ago, I think." The rescue worker's eyes widened. She spoke rapidly into her radio, then turned back to Mei Lin. "We need to get you both to a hospital right away. Can you walk to the helicopter?" Mei Lin nodded, but her legs gave way as soon as she tried to take a step. The second rescue worker, a tall man, caught her before she fell. "I've got you," he said, and carefully lifted both Mei Lin and Lifen in his arms. In the helicopter, a medic immediately gave Mei Lin water and checked Lifen's vital signs. The baby was surprisingly healthy despite everything, pink and alert when unwrapped from her makeshift blanket. "She's a fighter," the medic said with admiration. "And so are you." At the hospital, doctors and nurses swarmed around them. Mei Lin was put on an IV for dehydration, while Lifen was checked thoroughly in the neonatal unit. Both were found to be remarkably well considering their ordeal. It was there, in a quiet hospital room with Lifen sleeping peacefully in a proper bassinet beside her bed, that Mei Lin heard a commotion in the hallway. "My wife and baby. They were brought in by helicopter. Please, I need to see them." That voice, the voice she had feared she would never hear again. The door burst open and there was Raj, unshaven, clothes covered in soot, eyes wild with worry and hope. He froze when he saw her, as if afraid she might be a dream that would vanish. "Mei Lin," he whispered. "We're here," she said, tears flowing again. "We made it." He crossed the room in 2 strides and gathered her in his arms, holding her as if he would never let go. When they finally pulled apart, Mei Lin pointed to the bassinet. "There's someone you need to meet." Raj turned, and his expression melted from exhaustion to wonder. Gently, he reached down to touch his daughter's tiny hand. "This is Lifen," Mei Lin said. "It means beautiful phoenix. She was born in fire, but she's going to soar." Raj lifted the sleeping baby with trembling hands, cradling her against his chest. "She's perfect," he managed to say through tears. Their family reunion was captured by a nurse who later shared the photo with Mei Lin's permission. It spread across news outlets around the country, a miracle family who had survived the worst wildfire in the region's history. The image of Mei Lin, Raj, and tiny Lifen became a symbol of hope amid devastating loss. In the days that followed, they learned the full scope of the disaster. Dozens of lives lost, hundreds of homes destroyed, thousands of acres burned. But amid the tragedy were stories of survival and courage, and none more remarkable than the woman who gave birth in a mine while flames consumed the world above. Some people are calling you a hero, a reporter told Mai Lin when she finally agreed to a brief interview. I'm not a hero, she said, looking down at life and sleeping in her arms. I'm just a mother who refused to give up.